Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's video, we're going to talk about the true story behind the atomic bombs that were dropped on Japan by USA in 1945. Now, the reason that I'm making a special introduction for today's video is that this video forms part of a new experiment that I'm running on the channel. I've been looking for ways to develop the channel and to create more content. And I think delving into the history books is a really interesting thing to do. And if you're a long-standing fan of the channel, you'll know that in 2022, I tried an experiment whereby I was trying to get more people to become creators on YouTube. I set up a second channel and asked people to send me videos. Now, that experiment didn't really take off, and I think the reason for that was that we didn't have a defined category. The channel was all over the place. So what I'd like to do this time round is try to encourage people to make videos about interesting historic events. Now, the format is going to be exactly the same as the Joe Blogs format. So the whole video needs to be broken down into chapters and nicely structured with an intro and a summary at the end. So have a look at today's video to get a feel for the format. And if you think this is something you'd like to be involved in, then drop me an email at the email that's listed on my About page. So anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed seeing me again, the Joe Blog sign, one of the statues, and I really hope that you enjoy the video.
For how prevalent nuclear bombs are in our collective consciousness and imagination, it is sometimes strange to realise that they've only ever been used twice in human history, and both of those happened in the same month against the same enemy. In today's video, we'll go over the brief history of the development of nuclear bombs, starting with the Nazis' rise to power in 1933 and the Manhattan Project. We will then look at the state of the Second World War by the start of August 1945, and take a look at the options open to the Allies to bring a swift end to the conflict. One of these options was the full-scale invasion of Japan, codenamed Operation Downfall, which we will look at in detail. Following this, we will analyse what actually happened, President Truman's decision to drop 2 nuclear bombs on Japan, and reflect on what this means for us today, given the current political climate. Chapter 1. The development of nuclear weapons. In 1933, with the rise of the Nazis to power in Germany, a dark cloud of persecution descended upon Jewish scientists and intellectuals, forcing many of them to flee fascist countries in Europe. Among these brilliant minds were several key figures who would go on to play significant roles in the development of nuclear weapons. One such example is the renowned physicist Albert Einstein, who had already fled Germany in 1933 and settled in the United States. Einstein's groundbreaking theory of relativity had laid the foundation for future nuclear research, and his presence in the United States would prove crucial in the years to come. Early developments and theories about nuclear weapons began to take shape during this time. In 1938, German chemists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann made a groundbreaking discovery when they successfully split the uranium atom, a process known as nuclear fission. This revelation caught the attention of physicists worldwide, and it became evident that harnessing the energy released from nuclear fission could lead to potentially devastating weapons. As World War II loomed on the horizon, scientists in the United States recognized the potential implications of nuclear fission and the possibility of building a nuclear bomb. This realization prompted the formation of the Manhattan Project in 1942, a top-secret research and development effort that would change the course of history forever. Under the leadership of General Leslie R. Groves and scientific direction from J Robert Oppenheimer, the Manhattan Project brought together the brightest minds in science and engineering. The project's main facility, located in Los Alamos, New Mexico, became the focal point of intense research and experimentation. Los Alamos served as the birthplace of the atomic bomb, and its scientists worked tirelessly to overcome numerous scientific and engineering challenges. To produce the necessary fissile material, the Manhattan Project developed massive production plants in Oak Ridge, Tennessee and Hanford, Washington. These facilities utilized different methods to enrich uranium and produce plutonium, both of which were potential materials for nuclear weapons. The development of the bomb included building 2 distinct designs: the uranium-235-based Little Boy and a plutonium-based Fat Man. Little Boy relied on the gun-type assembly, where 2 subcritical masses of uranium-235 were brought together rapidly to achieve a critical mass and initiate the nuclear explosion. On the other hand, Fat Man used an implosion-type design, where conventional explosives uniformly compressed a subcritical sphere of plutonium to achieve the critical mass. The successful testing of these designs was a pivotal moment for the Manhattan Project. On July 16, 1945, the world's first nuclear test, codenamed Trinity, took place in the New Mexico desert. The test resulted in a powerful explosion, confirming the feasibility of nuclear weapons and marking a turning point in human history. Throughout the Manhattan Project, the scientists grappled with ethical concerns over the use of such a devastating weapon. Some, like J Robert Oppenheimer, were haunted by the potential consequences of their creation. Oppenheimer famously quoted the Bhagavad Gita, saying, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," after witnessing the Trinity test. Chapter 2. The State of the War. By August 1945, World War II had been raging in Europe for 6 years and has only just come to an end with the defeat of Nazi Germany. However, a significant event had occurred earlier in the year that would reshape the course of the war: the death of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Upon Roosevelt's passing, Harry S. Truman assumed the presidency and was now faced with the daunting task of leading the United States to victory in both Europe and the Pacific. In the Pacific theatre of war, the Japanese had been engaged in conflict since they invaded China in 1937, sparking the Second Sino-Japanese War. Their rapid expansion across Asia had led to widespread devastation and loss of life. However, it was the bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, in Roosevelt's words, a date that will live in infamy, that brought the United States directly into the war. The Americans launched a slow but relentless island-hopping campaign in the Pacific to push back the Japanese forces. Key battles such as Guadalcanal, Tarawan, Saipan, and Iwo Jima were fought with intense ferocity, regarding in staggering casualties on both sides. The Pacific War was characterized by its violent and bloody nature. As the fighting continued, casualties mounted. At the Battle of Guadalcanal, for instance, the United States suffered over 1,500 killed, 4,200 wounded, and more than 4,500 casualties due to illness alone. The Japanese fared even worse, losing over 6,000 men and dozens of aircraft. The Battle of Iwo Jima was one of the bloodiest, with nearly 7,000 American deaths and over 18,000 wounded. The Japanese fought to the last man, suffering more than 20,000 casualties. As the Americans steadily advanced closer to the Japanese mainland, the desperation of the Japanese resistance grew. In the Battle of Okinawa, which raged from April to June 1945, both sides experienced staggering losses. The United States lost over 12,500 men and more than 36,000 wounded, whilst the Japanese lost over 110,000 soldiers and, more worryingly, around 100,000 civilians. The Battle of Okinawa, therefore, was a turning point, as it made clear the significant human cost of an invasion of the Japanese homeland. Truman now faced multiple options to end the war in Japan. He could continue the island-hopping campaign and intensify the bombing of Japanese cities, a strategy that had already caused immense devastation in cities like Tokyo and Yokohama. He could pursue a full-scale invasion of Japan, codenamed Operation Downfall, with the potential for catastrophic casualties on both sides. Additionally, Truman now had another option which had just been successfully developed by the aforementioned Manhattan Project: the use of nuclear weapons. Chapter 3. Truman's Options. President Harry S. Truman faced a critical decision on how to end the war against Japan. He had two main options on the table. The first option was Operation Downfall, a full-scale invasion of Japan that aimed to force the unconditional surrender of the Japanese forces. Operation Downfall consisted of two phases: Operation Olympic, which involved the invasion of Kyushu, and Operation Coronet, which planned to invade the Tokyo Plain on the Japanese mainland. The invasion was projected to be one of the largest amphibious assaults in history, with millions of troops engaged on both sides. From Truman's perspective, Operation Downfall had both strengths and weaknesses. On the one hand, a successful invasion could ensure the complete defeat of Japan and eliminate any doubts about the effectiveness of the operation. It would demonstrate the military might of the Allies and send a clear message to the Japanese leadership that surrender was their only option. Furthermore, a traditional invasion would give the United States a chance to occupy Japan and play a significant role in shaping its post-war reconstruction and future political landscape. However, the cons of Operation Downfall were deeply concerning. The invasion would undoubtedly result in massive casualties on both sides. Military estimates predicted that hundreds of thousands of American soldiers could lose their lives, while the Japanese were expected to defend their homeland fiercely, leading to a high number of civilian and military casualties. The potential devastation and prolonged nature of the invasion raised serious concerns about the human cost and the potential impact on the morale of the American public. Truman's second main option was to use the newly developed nuclear weapons. With the successful testing of the atomic bomb during the Manhattan Project, the United States possessed a weapon of immense destructive power. The ethical issues surrounding the use of nuclear weapons were significant, however. One possibility Truman considered was a demonstration of the bomb's power on an uninhabited island as a warning to Japan. However, even this option had its drawbacks. The Japanese might not fully grasp the magnitude of the weapon without experiencing its devastating effects on their own cities and people. Moreover, the Japanese leadership had shown little indication of surrendering, even after the devastating conventional bombing campaigns. The decision to use the nuclear bomb on populated cities also raised ethical dilemmas. Truman and his advisors were aware of the potential for immense civilian casualties, but they believed it would ultimately save more lives in the long run by hastening Japan's surrender and avoiding the need for a full-scale invasion. They hoped that the shock and the horror of the atomic bombings would push Japan to capitulate and bring a speedy end to the war. In the end, Truman settled on using the nuclear bomb as the most viable option to secure a swift and decisive end to the war. The weight of the decision was ominous, knowing that he alone held the power to unleash a weapon capable of an unimaginable destruction and loss of life. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki would forever change the course of history and usher in a new era of warfare and international relations. Chapter 4. The Atomic Bombing of Japan. On August 6, 1945, the world witnessed a historic and devastating event as the United States dropped the first atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima, Japan. Before the bombing, the United States issued an ultimatum to Japan, demanding their immediate surrender or face prompt and utter destruction. The Japanese government, however, remained defiant, and the stage was set for a momentous and tragic event. In the days leading up to the bombing, the United States military had been conducting intense firebombing raids on Japanese cities. On August 1, 1945, leaflets were dropped over several major cities in Japan, including Hiroshima and Nagasaki, warning citizens of impending destruction and urging them to evacuate to save their lives. Despite these warnings, many Japanese authorities dismissed the threat, believing the leaflets to be nothing more than mere propaganda. However, on August 6, 1945, at approximately 8:15 a.m. local time, the B-29 bomber named Enola Gay, piloted by Colonel Paul Tibbets, dropped the atomic bomb, codenamed Little Boy, over Hiroshima. The bomb exploded about 600 metres above the city, generating an intense flash of light, a deafening blast, and a massive shockwave that obliterated much of the city. The temperature at the hypercentre rose to several thousand degrees Celsius, causing immediate incineration of people and structures. An estimated 70 to 80,000 people were killed instantly, and tens of thousands would perish from injuries and radiation exposure in the following days, weeks, and months. The devastation caused by the bombing of Hiroshima was unparalleled, yet the Japanese government remained reluctant to surrender. In fact, they still did not fully comprehend the true nature of the weapon used against them. On August 9, 1945, the United States dropped a second atomic bomb, codenamed Fat Man, on the city of Nagasaki. The B-29 bomber Boxcar, piloted by Major Charles Sweeney, carried the bomb, which detonated at 11:02 a.m., resulting in an estimated 40,000 immediate deaths. The combined death toll from the two bombings, along with the subsequent effects of radiation, has been conservatively estimated to be well over 200,000 people. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki had a profound and lasting impact on Japan. The immediate human toll was horrific, with countless lives lost, families torn apart, and communities decimated. The survivors, known as hibakusha, faced unimaginable suffering, with many suffering from severe burns, illnesses, and the long-term effects of radiation exposure. The psychological trauma inflicted upon the Japanese people was immense, leaving scars that would last for generations. Despite the devastation, it took the Japanese government several more days to make the momentous decision to surrender. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which demanded their unconditional surrender. The war had finally come to an end, but at a staggering cost to humanity. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki ushered in a new era of warfare and marked a turning point in world history. The bombings showcased the terrifying power of nuclear weapons and raised profound moral and ethical questions about the use of such a devastating force. The human impact of these bombings is a somber reminder of the consequences of war and the urgent need for peace and diplomacy in the face of conflict. Japan's eventual surrender may have marked the conclusion of one of the bloodiest and most destructive wars in history, but it also left a lasting legacy of pain, suffering. The story of the atomic bombings of Japan is undeniably a harrowing one. I believe, however, that on balance, the cost to human life that may have been paid if the Allies had invaded mainland Japan would have been even higher, and thus morally, the nuclear bombings were the right thing to do, however unpleasant. Surely the biggest lesson to learn from the atomic bombings of Japan is to never allow humankind to ever force itself into such a position where the sort of debates Truman had with his staff ever need to happen again. The bombing of Japan should serve as a warning to all governments that the increasing tension of the 21st century should never be allowed to escalate to such heights again. I hope you all enjoyed today's video and found it to be as interesting as I did. If you did, please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. But most importantly, I hope you all have a great day.